Hey guys, welcome to another BMS 4.33 tutorial. In this one we're going to be talking about dropping bombs in visual mode. I think we'll also do, maybe a rocket run and a gun run with the Vulcan 20mm cannon. So one of the things we want to talk about is, what is visual bombing? If you just think back to World War II, and those guys would essentially dive bomb, okay? The Stuka would dive bomb at close to 90-degree angle. Navy dive bombers would do the same thing. And so essentially we're pointing our nose at the ground, at a target, and we're going to try to release the bomb at a point where our speed and our altitude, we're going to compute that, and hopefully the bomb can impact the target. Now, the modern aircraft have computers which calculate that for you. All right. Now in the Navy, it's constantly computed impact point, which is known as CCIP. In the Air Force, I think it's constantly computed impact point. So it's a little bit different terminology, but it's the same exact system. All right. The first thing I like to do is actually demonstrate a CCIP run in the Hornet, just to demonstrate some of the issues with it. And before we do that, let's set up the aircraft for targeting. So obviously we want the master arm on. We're going to go to air to ground mode, and then if we go into our SMS page, we should be able to cycle between our air to ground weapons. You can also do it here. Okay, I'm using my HOTUS, and I'm selecting the Mark 82 Snake Eye, and that's the weapon right down there. The Mark 82 Snake Eye is unique in that it actually has fins that deploy on the tail there, and what that makes them is a high drag missile. All right, and you can deliver bombs at very low altitude because that fin is going to create a tremendous amount of drag. It's going to slow the bomb down significantly, and so you're able to drop at very low altitude without a risk for fragging yourself. So if you just think about the way a bomb deploys on the ground, kind of like a grenade, right? It's all that forward velocity. We want to drop around 400 knots, 450 knots or so. All that forward velocity is moving forward at the same speed as the aircraft. So if you're flying low and the bomb impacts and you're too low, the shrapnel from the bomb, or if you want to think of it as a grenade, is actually going to hit your own aircraft. Okay, it's called fragging yourself. And there's a few ways that we can avoid that. So the Mark 82S, or the Snake Eyes, are really great for low altitude because it deploys that fin. That bomb's going to slow down significantly, and you can drop it, like 200 feet off the ground, 100 feet off the ground. Right? Now you can use the conventional Mark 82s as well. It's just what we're using today. So we're going to account for that, and let's set up our TGP here. I'm going to go into air to ground mode, and my favorite mode is black hot, just because you can see things a lot better. On my HUD here, you can see my my waypoints, and I'm going to select waypoint. There's 13, 14. I'm actually going to select waypoint 12, which is an air to ground target. And then we're going to go down here and we're going to go manual on our programs. Okay, these are the program numbers. If you don't have this set up, you can do that on your DTE in the briefing page. So just go into your DTE. You can set up whether you want chaff, flare, combinations of them. My program 4 is a pretty long flare program, and I think it has some chaff in there as well. So it's good for ground attack. I think it gives me about 6 seconds of constantly deploying flare and chaff. You want to set that up yourself before the flight. Okay, so let's get this flight started here. And if you notice that I'm using a different terrain than you may be, it's because I actually reverted back to Tom's HD terrain for Korea. And I've noticed that my frame rate is like 20 or 30 more. The terrain for 4.33 is very demanding, and a lot of people have noticed significant drops. So it's just something I'm testing right now. The Tom's Korea HD was made for 4.32, but it seems to be working just fine. And my frames are back up to 60 frames a second, as opposed to getting 40, 30, and down even to the 20s. And I can actually run the TGP at 60 frames a second, which is Pretty amazing. Alright, so the target we're going after, if you look down here at the TGP, I'll select it and I'll zoom in with my range on my throttle here. And then if you use the pinky switch on your fighter stick, you can actually zoom in wide versus narrow. So that's the target we're going for right there. I'll go ahead and zoom out here. We're going to do a medium altitude drop, and pretty much it's going to be around 15,000 up to 25,000 maybe. High altitude would be about 30,000 or so, or between 25 and 30,000. And let's use a CCIP for this first run. All right. So you never want to approach directly on the target. You actually want to do it at an angle. When that target's about 45 degrees below you, you want to pull up and then pull down on the target. Now just remember, you don't want to pull past 5.5 Gs because the fuses on the weapons can actually break. And what that means is that the weapon's not going to arm. Alright, so there's my predetermined target right there. Alright, and we run into a pretty good problem here. Alright, I'm at 500 knots, it's plenty of airspeed. One of the common problems with CCIP is you don't have enough smash on the jet or airspeed on the jet. So I'm going to go over to 1. Now, in the F-16, you would see the Pipper, and what that looks like is a circle. If you fly the F-16 and you drop in CCIP, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's a big circle, and it tells you exactly where the bombs are going to drop right now. And that's what CCIP stands for. It's continuously calculated or constantly computed impact point, where the computer is accounting for wind via the INS, it's accounting for your airspeed, your altitude, your dive angle, and it's telling you, hey, based on all these factors, here's where the bomb's going to drop. Now the problem in the Hornet, which a lot of people have reported, is that you actually can't see the Pipper. You can't see where the bombs are going to drop whatsoever. So in order to mitigate that and kind of work with the F-18 in BMS, we're actually going to use CCRP mode. And we'll kind of talk about how this is going to work out. So let me reset here, and I'll demonstrate a CCRP drop. Alright, so let's turn back towards the target in CCRP mode. And you'll notice every time I turn, my TGP is not focusing on that. So just TMS up and just get a lock on the ground there. Alright, so there I got a good lock on the target, just so you can see it. If you TMS up and it gets an infrared point lock, then it'll lock on that target and it won't sway. Now realize you don't need the TGIP for visual bombing. So just to demonstrate that, we're going to turn it off completely. Alright, so there's a range down there. I'm at 19,000 feet, which is a nice kind of medium altitude to be at. And we're going to set up a few parameters in CCRP. Alright. So let me pause it here for a second. You want to go control, and then we're going to go down to this release angle here. Our release angle, ideally when you are visually bombing in the Hornet, you want to be anywhere between 40 and 45 degrees. You want to have at least 400 knots on the jet, if not more. But you got to be careful, because if you go 500, some of your stores may get damaged. Okay, past 500 knots. Certainly at 600, you're going to start hearing things crack and start to rip off of the aircraft. And BMS models that, which, you know, kudos to the devs for doing all that. So if you start getting to 500 knots and you start hearing things crack, you know you need to slow down. All right, so 400, 450 knots is where we want to be. The second thing we want to do is, if we were using regular Mark 82s, we would just use nose. But since we're using a high drag configuration on the Mark 82S or the Snake Eyes, we want to go ahead and use tail. All right. So now that that's set up, let's continue on the run here. So again, you're not going to fly directly towards the target. You always want it down at the left or right side of the aircraft. Now, typically left turns are always easier because most pilots are going to be right-handed flying BMS. Alright, so now that we're over the target, we're actually going to pitch up.
Flare.
And then we're going to invert. And we're going to pull down. Now watch your G's. You don't want to pull past 5.5. Okay? Or you might ruin those fuses. Alright, so now we're going to get lined up with the target here. And I'll show you a few things here. Okay, so down there's our target right at the center of that. You can see we're slightly left. There's our flight path marker. Alright. You can see this bracket, just like in the AMRAAM, we're within range to drop the missile. Here is our range to the target, which is 3.1, and here's the time it's going to take for the computer to release the bomb at this specific dive angle and at this specific airspeed. So what we're going to do is wait for this to count down to about 3 seconds. We're going to hold down the pickle button. Now, another common error is that people will just press that red button on their fighter stick and expect the bomb to release, and that's not going to happen. The computer needs to confirm and verify that it's ready to release a weapon. Alright, so what it means to hold down the pickle button, hold down that red button, you consent to release for a few seconds, and you're telling the computer that, hey, I really want to release this weapon, and then the computer is going to decide when the ideal time is. So don't just hit the button, you actually want to hold it down until the bomb actually releases. Alright, so let's continue the approach here. And if the target's right, we're going to go right. There's 9 seconds.
Chaff flare.
6, 5. And you want to be lined up. 3. I'm going to start a gentle pull. And there's the release.
Chaff flare. Altitude. Altitude.
And there's our bomb. Not a bad hit. As you come off the target, you want a 5G turn off the target, and you want to start maneuvering. Assume that somebody's fired a surface-to-air missile at you. There's a lot of guys down there with shoulder-launched surface-to-air missiles, and so you want to jink off target if you can. All right, let's set up for another run. Alright, so let's set up on a different run here. My target 13, and these are all pre-planned steer points. In CCRP, you do need a target. The beauty of CCIP bombing is that you don't need to pre-designate anything. You just see a tank out there. You get the Pipper on the tank. You consent to release, and it's going to drop the bomb exactly where that Pipper is. Alright, so that's the beauty of that. Since we can't do that in the Hornet, we just have to compromise and pre-designate targets. And you can also designate targets with radar, and you can do it visually on the HUD, which you can look at documentation and figure out how to do that. But for now, we're just going to use pre-planned targets. Alright, so there's an F4 Phantom right at the center of that stack. And if we kind of look down here, you can see we got some hits on that stack down there. We're gonna try to attack and dive bomb on them using CCRP. So let's go ahead and do that. 15,000 seems to be a nice altitude for visual bombing, but you want to pull away from the ground as soon as practical. All right. And the reason for that is you don't want to be susceptible to SAMs, and ground fire, a ZSU-23 out there that's going to annihilate you. And if you go under 10,000 feet, you only want to do it for a few seconds. Alright, there's 11 seconds, 10, 9, 8. We're going to keep coming down here.
Chaff flare.
And there's 3. I'm going to do a gentle pull off target. And there's the bomb release.
Altitude. Altitude.
And there's our Phantoms.
Altitude.
Looks like
Altitude.
we got a decent hit on those Phantoms.
Chaff flare.
Remember to maneuver off target.
Chaff flare. Low. Chaff flare. Out.
Alright, so that's basically CCRP mode in the Hornet. Now, of course, when we get into more complicated weapons like laser-guided bombs and JDAMs, we're also going to be using CCRP. Really, what it's meant for, it's not really meant for visual bombing. It's more meant for level bombing at high altitude. And the computer is going to calculate when you should release the bomb, and then, of course, you're going to fire the laser. The LGB is going to hit, or you're going to pickle the JDAM, and then it's going to use its GPS coordinates to find that target. So this is just a compromise for the Hornet in 4.33. Alright, let's get the rockets on and the gun on. Alright, so the rockets are actually really fun in the Hornet. I'll bring it down here. I'll show you the symbology for it. So there's our target right there. And the actual Pipper for the rockets is over here on the right side. And I think it used to be down at the bottom, but it kind of makes sense because the rockets are actually on the right side of the aircraft, and it's tracking where the rockets are. You can see that white pod there. It's tracking where the rockets are in relation to the nose. So since they're on the wing over there, right there, it's going to be on the right side. I think they actually updated that from 4.32, where they used to be in the center or something like that. Unless that's the glitch, I'm not sure. Anyway, so that's what we're going to use to visually identify our target. And we have a bunch of armored vehicles down there. And it's an area attack weapon. Oops. Anyway, it's down there somewhere.
Altitude.
So we're going to fire them off. Just pickle once, and you'll see the impacts. Boom. Nice. Always a fun weapon to use. And you see the rocket pod's empty on the right wing there. You can see it there too. It's pretty cool looking. Alright guys, so the last thing we're going to do is a strafing run on this vertical target here. And we're a little bit lower. You can certainly strafe at low altitudes. It's not a problem whatsoever. But we're not going to do a shallow 10-degree nice dive to the target. We're actually going to use some aggressive maneuvering, and we're going to dive on it just like we do with a bomb. 30 degrees is probably fine. And there's the target down there. That's about 25 degrees, or 27. That's pretty good. Okay, so the way you're going to select the gun is you're just going to hit this little button right here. And that's going to bring it to gun, and it's going to say it's going to have the strafe mode on there. Okay, just like the A-10, like I talked about in the 4.32 video, you're going to get this symbology here. Once you get in range, you're going to see a little vertical line. This circle is going to double up. It's going to thicken up, and then you're going to get a counterclockwise indicator, which tells you that you're in range, and it's going to go this way. Of course, minimum range is here. Don't fixate on the target. You want to do a burst and break off the target as soon as possible. All right, so let's get on it. All right, there you can see the impacts down there.
Altitude. Altitude.
Which looks pretty awesome. Now the F-18, there's some of our impacts down there. The F-18's gun is actually on the nose, and I'm not sure if they'll fix this in future releases. It would be nice. It's right on the center of the nose, and I'll show you exactly where it is. Right there. So we shouldn't get that right turning tendency. The F-16's cannon is on the left side of the nose, so you kind of get that. Actually, it'll pull the nose to the left. That is, or I can't remember now. Anyway, you shouldn't get an asymmetrical pull left or right on the nose like you would in the F-16. It should just be centered. As far as I know, there may be some, due to the Gatling gun actually spinning, the cannon spinning inside the nose. There might be a slight, kind of change, but I think it's modeled on the F-16. So just be aware that you're going to get some oscillation of the nose, and you want to use some rudder to correct that in the opposite direction. Okay, so that's pretty much visual bombing using CCRP mode in the Hornet. We also covered rockets visually, and we also covered the M61 Vulcan 20mm gun. That's all you need to know for the most part about combat air support or visual bombing in the Hornet. And then the next videos will be covering some more complicated weapon systems, specifically LGBs, JDAMs, and then I'll probably do a Maverick video as well. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll keep the tutorials coming, and hope you guys enjoy.